Hey everybody, I hope y'all are doing good. I hope y'all are doing well. Today, I want to talk some about the technologies. I want to try to start dipping off into that because it's a very dense learning situation, I guess. But with the recent events in South America, I think this is a good prime opportunity to kind of start into maybe the basics of this stuff. So I pray that you can stick around and hopefully learn a little bit. And again, remember, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and dark rulers in heavenly places. So yeah, let's get into it. So if you remember in the last video where I gave an account of just a few of the different experiences I've had, the ones that the Lord was leading me to share, and how I described to you that it's not always necessarily just a purely demonic force type of attack. Some of them have just been, whether it's a mix between witchcraft and technology, or even sometimes it just seemed like it's just purely like technology, like there was nothing else with it, if that makes sense. But that doesn't mean it didn't derive in that manner, okay? So the loud frequencies that I briefly spoke on in the last video, this is partly what we're seeing, what we just saw that happen. That isn't really making the news. It's just kind of barely leaked out, okay? But I don't think it needs to be overlooked. I think it intentionally was minorly leaked out on purpose. So I will tell you that one of the first times that I experienced something very similar to that, it was absolutely painstaking. We'd have to dive into like the laws and stuff that are within war, but there's a reason why they're going this energy weapon type of route. And now, before I get into the videos I have clipping into this video about the attack itself in South America, and then a few more clips about brain states, I just want to briefly explain to you one of the experiences I had a little bit more in depth. I was basically asleep. I was completely asleep, abruptly waking up out of my sleep into paralysis, and immediately during that, it's like this loud sound that is so horribly loud. It's nearly like it's going through your body completely. Like it's completely going through you. You cannot think. You literally, like it, whatever part of your brain accesses thought or forms thought, it completely is trampling over it during the time. And for me, it felt like it went on for like 30 or 45 minutes. There's no telling how long it actually lasted. But all I could think during the whole time was, this has got to stop. Like, it would genuinely be better to not be here than to deal with this. Like, I'm not trying to freak anybody out, I'm just being honest. And I didn't experience the effects afterward near as bad as what these people did, but and if I had to describe the sound of it, actually, like the tune I guess it seemed to carry, the only thing it reminded me of is like those emergency alerts. Like, you know how they're just like an abrupt, like loud, like shocking sound? It's like that, but like times 1,000. And again, not to freak anybody out, but people need to understand that this technology and these types of weapons are real. And this is not, just a, oh, maybe, or that's just a rumor, they really don't have stuff like that sort of situation. This stuff is real. It is real, and it is weaponized, and they have mastered manipulation of the brain. Simplest way to put it. And the reason I feel led to really try to break this down as best as I can in my understanding, and I don't understand all of it by any means, but there's a day coming soon where all of the kingdoms will turn power over to the beast, okay? And again, mankind has dominion over the earth right now, and free will to do unto other mankind. And with that being said, maybe by the end of this video, we'll try to find some different psalms and things like that, scriptures that plead protection over ourselves, not just against demonic forces, but also against mankind that is trying to carry out the enemy's will. So yes, let's get into it. We're going to talk about this attack specifically, and then we're just going to talk about the different brain states and the frequencies of each brain state. Okay, so this here is a tweet that Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, posted, and it is an account from a Venezuelan security guard who is loyal to Nicolas Maduro. She said to stop and pay attention to it, so let us read. It explains a lot about why the tone across Latin America suddenly changed. Security guard, on the day of the operation, we didn't hear anything coming. We were on guard, but suddenly all of our radar systems shut down without any explanation. The next thing we saw were drones, a lot of drones, flying over our positions. We didn't know how to react. Interviewer, so what happened next? How was the main attack? Security guard, after those drones appeared, some helicopters arrived, but they were very few. I think barely 8 helicopters. From those helicopters, soldiers came down, but a very small number, maybe 20 men, but those men were technologically very advanced. They didn't look like anything we've fought against before. Interviewer, and then the battle began? Security guard, yes, but it was a massacre. We were hundreds, but we had no chance. They were shooting with such precision and speed, it seemed like each soldier was firing 300 rounds per minute. We couldn't do anything. Interviewer, and your own weapons, didn't they help? Security guard, no help at all, because it wasn't just the weapons. At one point, they launched something, I don't know how to describe it. It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly, I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were vomiting blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. Interviewer, and your comrades, did they manage to resist? Security guard, no, not at all. Those 20 men, without a single casualty, got hundreds of us. We had no way to compete with their technology and their weapons. I swear I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't even stand up after the sonic weapon or whatever it was. Interviewer, so do you think the rest of the region should think twice before confronting the Americans? Security guard, without a doubt. I'm sending a warning to anyone who thinks they can fight against the United States. They have no idea what they're capable of. After what I saw, I never want to be on the other side of that again. They're not to be messed with. Interviewer, and now that Trump has said Mexico is on the list, do you think that the situation will change in Latin America? Security guard, definitely. Everyone is already talking about this. No one wants to go through what we went through. Now everyone thinks twice. What happened here is going to change a lot of things, not just in Venezuela, but throughout the region. Okay, now mind you, the press secretary is the one who shared this and told everyone to pay attention to this. So, nonetheless, I'm going to clip in just a news article of someone speaking about the incident.
Now, did U.S. use a powerful mystery weapon during the raid to capture Nicolas Maduro? American forces wiped out hundreds of fighters without losing a single soldier. Now, a new report may shed some light on the methods used by them. According to the report, the U.S. used a powerful mystery weapon that rendered Venezuelan soldiers ineffective during the raid. The report is based on an alleged account of the night's event by a Venezuelan guard. Now, the account claims that the weapon brought Venezuelan soldiers to their knees. They were bleeding through the nose and vomiting blood. The alleged witness account was also shared on social media by the White House press secretary. In the interview, the guard allegedly described how U.S. forces use technology unlike anything he has ever seen. He said that all their radar systems shut down without any explanation. It was followed by a lot of drones flying over their positions. He claimed that 8 helicopters arrived moments later, deploying what he estimated were just 20 U.S. troops into the area. But he said that these few men came armed with something far more powerful than guns. The guard claims that the U.S. troops shot with precision and speed. He said, and I'm quoting, "It felt like each soldier was firing 300 rounds per minute." At one point, U.S. troops launched another weapon, according to the guard's account. It was like a very intense sound wave, and he felt like his head was exploding from the inside. He claimed that the Venezuelan side started bleeding from the nose, while some were vomiting blood. They were unable to move. An estimated 100 Venezuelan security forces were killed in the January 3 attack. The White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has shared the account on social media. However, the White House has not confirmed whether administration was verifying the veracity of the eyewitness account.
They're saying that the U.S. used a powerful sonic weapon that brought Venezuelan soldiers to their knees, bleeding through the nose and vomiting blood during their daring raid to capture Nicolas Maduro. This is according to a witness, as the county post was on Saturday on X by the White House Secretary, Caroline Leavitt. Now, that's very interesting because they have, if we know about it, Mexico knows about it, and they've been told, just like Cuba, you could be next. And so if they are, especially if it's coming out of the White House about this information, this newer technology, it's not brand new, but the way that the guy described the soldiers was very unique also. He said he'd never seen anything like that, and that they seemed to be firing hundreds of rounds per minute, and that possibly hundreds of soldiers were killed. In a jaw-dropping interview, the guard described how American forces wiped out hundreds of fighters without losing a single soldier, using technology unlike anything he has ever seen or heard. We were on guard, but suddenly all of our radar systems shut down without any explanation. The guard said the next thing we saw were drones, a lot of drones flying over our positions. We didn't know how to react. They were blocking out the radar and communications and everything else. It says moments later, a handful of helicopters appeared, maybe 8 by his count, dropping what estimated were just 20 U.S. troops in the area. Could be. By those few men, he said, those few men came armed with something far more powerful than guns. They were technologically very advanced, the guard recalled. They didn't look like anything we fought against before. Are we already dealing with AI or robotic troops? Or hybrid? No, now, we've seen that, again, Cuba, Mexico, a couple other nations have been warned about the U.S. troop involvement, trying to stop the narco-terrorism chain that crosses South America, try to stop it and cut it out. Now, it's interesting also that in the video early this morning, we talked about Trump was sending in another 1,000 troops. Already had 2,000, that would put 3,000 there. And if he signs the Insurrection Act, then it will become a military operation very quickly. And he may be giving a signal to more than just Cuba and Colombia and places like that, guys, because if he's talking about doing this and he lets this information out, who's going to stand up against it? What ensued, this guard said, was not a battle but a slaughter. We were hundreds, but we had no chance. He said they were shooting with such precision and speed, it felt like each soldier was firing 300 rounds per minute. Then came the weapon that still haunts him. At one point, they launched something. He said, I don't know how to describe it. It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly, I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. Guys, that ends the battle. He said the effect was immediate and horrific. We all started bleeding from the nose again. Some were vomiting blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. We couldn't even stand up after that sonic weapon or whatever it was. And he must be, again, one of the survivors. The White House did not immediately respond to a question regarding whether Caroline Leavitt's sharing of the post, which included the caption, "Stop what you're doing and read this," possibly indicating the administration was verifying the veracity of the eyewitness account. And it's amazing because we don't know what the U.S. military has, whether it's a UFO or high-tech planes or high-tech weapons. We may never know. After what I saw, I never want to be on the other side of that again. They're not to be messed with. The guard said the raid had already sent shockwaves across Latin America, especially after President Donald Trump recently warned that Mexico is now on the list. He said everyone is already talking about this there. No one wants to go through what we went through. What happened here is going to change a lot of things, not just Venezuela, but throughout the region, as in throughout the world. If they can do that, imagine if you had that same technology is applied to a ship that won't pull over, like the way they are confiscating oil and stopping these, what they call ghost ships. It could be done anywhere, football field, stadium, over a street that's running rampant with riders, like we saw last night. Maybe on a smaller scale, I don't know. But it's pretty amazing to me that they even talked about it, and it has to be, to me, to send a signal. And if you remember, Lindsey Graham has been posting these warning messages to Iran about messing with the U.S. So again, this information, I'm sure, has gotten back to Iran because they have 3 different proxies inside of Venezuela. The Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthi groups are embedded there, waiting to take their or make their move on the U.S. Why else would they be there? I know they're profiting from the narco trafficking, but why would you have those groups in there? And
Okay, so I do want to just say that what that guy had just mentioned earlier about he drew attention to how the soldiers had never seen anything like it, including like the technology that the soldiers had. You know, and I'm not going to dive into like as far as, you know, literally super soldiers, stuff like that. I don't doubt it, but I'm really just trying to draw attention to this technology in the brain states and the patents. As you can see here, this is just one of many with the ability to basically alter the brain state, like using forceful tools to push someone into a different brain state and controlling the nervous system, okay? And as far as I know, one thing I think is interesting is trying to figure out on the soldiers' behalf, you know, how they were not affected. And to be honest with you, the only 2 reasons I could come up with is either one, that they genuinely are some kind of something to where the technology does not affect them, or each of the drones that flew into position over all of the ops, I guess, that is the actual weapon. Like each drone zoned in on an individual person to attack. But I'm not trying to break down the whole operation of the situation. I'm just saying there's only 2 different reasons I could think of as to why our soldiers weren't affected, I guess, if that makes sense. But let's just briefly read this patent. And please feel free to go to the website that's in the screenshot and look these up. I highlighted the patent number in the top right corner. So this is a method and device for producing a desired brain state. A method and device for the production of a desired brain state in an individual contain means for monitoring and analyzing the brain state, while a set of 1 or more magnets produce fields that alter the state. A computational system alters various parameters of the magnetic fields in order to close the gap between the actual and desired brain state. This feedback process operates continuously until the gap is minimalized and/or removed. Sorry guys, it's hard for me to see the little print, but as you can see, this patent was filed in the year 2000, and it was approved in the year 2002. So obviously this technology has been around for a while, but I think there's a reason why they're kind of going a little bit heavy with not just using it, but allowing it to be kind of put into the press, if that makes any sense. And again, this is just one of many. And like, this is just me showing you that this patent, they just have a device where they simply can change and they can alter the state. And then they can, like, record it, basically. So I know we've got a lot to unpack, and I don't want to make this super confusing. We're just going to go little by little. I'm going to attach a video that is going to explain the different brain states, and then we can go from there.
Whether you're in a deep sleep, taking a test, or watching a YouTube video, your brain is abuzz with activity. There are millions of electrical pulses passing between neurons that are sending messages to each other. When those signals spread, clusters of neurons start getting feedback from others, and networks of cells synchronize their firing. It becomes a repeating cycle or rhythm, a brainwave, or as neuroscientists call them, neural oscillations. That organized electrical activity is strong enough to be detected by electrodes on the scalp, with a technique called electroencephalography, or EEG.
Okay, let me just take a quick pause within that video. This is a continuation of that first patent I just posted. Simply just showing you that in this specific one, you don't have to have the electrodes attached to your brain, that this is something that they can do without that, basically. So the EEG, they can read that without having anything visibly like attached to you, if that makes sense. They receive a signal. Like your brain is putting off signals either way, and they have a way to kind of remotely measure that. So yes, let's keep listening.
And that's allowed us to study brainwaves to try to make sense of the brain. While things are still pretty mysterious, lately we've been making strides to link brainwaves to things like consciousness, memory, and maybe even certain diseases. Now, brainwaves aren't one size fits all. There are actually lots of different electrical patterns defined by their frequency. They're measured in cycles, or the number of times the neurons are firing per second. Brainwaves also vary in amplitude, with lower amplitudes as they speed up. There are 5 main types, and there's no hard and fast rules about their functions. But generally, the higher frequency the wave, the more alert and awake you are. So the slowest of these 5 waves, which are of relatively high amplitude, are delta waves. They're typically linked with deep sleep. Slightly faster are theta waves, which are often associated with daydreaming or meditation. The next step up are alpha waves. These are common when you're awake, but relaxed, like when you still have your eyes closed. Beta waves are even higher frequency and lower amplitude, and seem to happen when you're awake and thinking about something. The smallest, fastest oscillations are gamma waves. They tend to be around when you're deeply focused on something. Now, even though we talk about beta waves when you're in class, or delta waves when you're sleeping, for simplicity's sake, the reality is that your brain is abuzz with all different frequencies of waves. It's just that certain ones are more dominant at any given moment, depending on what you're doing and how you're feeling. If you're chilling at the pool and sometimes closing your eyes to bask in the sun, you probably have a lot of alpha and theta going on. But there's still some beta waves in the background. It's not like your brain has the exact same wave frequencies throughout the whole thing. If you look at the readings from individual electrodes on an EEG, you can see that different regions of the brain are more commonly linked with certain waves. Alpha waves, for instance, are usually strongest at the back of the brain in the occipital lobe, which handles vision. One of the amazing things about brain waves is that these common frequencies are remarkably similar across different species, like cats, bats, and us. But at the same time, they might be very different between individuals. Some neuroscientists have even proposed that a snapshot of all the waves going on in a brain could be used to identify a person, like a fingerprint. So in some ways, measuring brainwaves could be very powerful. Like I can probably guess the moment you open your eyes just by looking at when your alpha waves drop off. Kind of freaky. And doctors have successfully used EEGs to diagnose people with epilepsy. Brainwaves punctuated with spikes are telltale signs of a seizure. We still don't fully understand why we have these rhythms in the first place. One popular idea is that the synchronized firing allows neurons to better communicate with one another. Recent work even suggests that the use of different brainwaves helps us learn. Researchers gave monkeys a test where they had to learn to associate pairs of images through trial and error. They found that when the animals got an answer right and received a reward, their brains seemed to be using beta waves to communicate to the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. When the monkeys got the answer wrong, theta waves dominated. So, beta waves might be a way of reinforcing neural connections to improve memory, while theta waves are a way of saying to the brain, hey, oops, forget that. Gamma waves are especially interesting to neurobiologists too, because people with Alzheimer's don't seem to use them as much. In fact, in experiments with mice, restoring gamma waves reduced the amount of beta amyloid, the plaque protein associated with the disease. The researchers genetically modified mouse neurons so they would respond to light, and then flashed pulses at a gamma wave frequency for an hour a day for a week. The animals that received this treatment had half as many plaques in their visual cortex compared to controls. The team thinks that gamma activity somehow makes immune cells in the brain better at gobbling up the plaques, and also changes how the protein is processed, leading to less plaque in the first place. Scientists aren't sure why gamma waves would do this, but their work suggests brainwaves can actually change the biology of the brain, and this could be huge. If you could figure out how to trigger gamma waves in people, they could be used as a treatment. But we really have no idea how to do that yet in humans, and of course, we don't know if it would actually work. Still, even if we don't totally get why they exist or how they work, it's clear that brainwaves are pretty important. Understanding the electrical activity is just as important as understanding the chemical processes when unraveling the mysteries of how our brains tick. Thanks.
Okay guys, I hope that you have bared with me some. I know it's really just a lot, and there's so many different patents to even try to look into, but I'm really just trying to prove to you that all of this it's here and it's being used and it's getting ready. But the Lord had recently, by the end of this video, he brought me to these Psalms I'd like to read for you. This first one is so important. It's been heavy on my heart these past several months, and this is Psalms 139, verse 23 and 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And the next one we are going to read is going to be Psalms 140. And we're just going to read part of it. So verse 1, Deliver me, O Lord, from evil men. Preserve me from violent men who plan evil things in their hearts, who they continually gather together for war. They sharpen their tongues like a serpent. The poison of asps is under their lips. Keep me, O Lord, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from violent men who have proposed to make my steps stumble. The proud have hidden a snare for me. In cords they have spread a net by the wayside. They have set traps for me. I said to the Lord, You are my God. Hear the voice of my supplications, O Lord. O God, the Lord, the strength of my salvation. You have covered my head in the day of battle. Do not grant, O Lord, the desires of the wicked. Do not further his wicked scheme, lest they be exalted. As for the head of those who surround me, let the evil of their lips cover them. Let burning coals fall upon them, let them be cast into the fire. Into deep pits that they rise not up again. Let not a slanderer be established in the earth. Let evil hunt the violent man to overthrow him. I know that the Lord will maintain the cause of the afflicted, and justice for the poor. Surely the righteous shall give thanks to your name. The upright shall dwell in your presence. And again, that was Psalms 140. Now we're going to skip over to Ephesians 6:11. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, having done all to stand. Stand, therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints, and for me, that utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that in it I may speak boldly as I ought to speak. I will say, the Lord just recently led me to Psalms 140, and then again over here to Ephesians 6:11, and particularly for this video, and I believe there's a lot of intention in both of these verses. You know, there are so many different tactics of the enemy, and so many different tactics that involve using mankind to fulfill the devil's will, basically. So I pray that you are all staying armored up, and remember, it is the blood of Jesus Christ. It is genuinely his sacrifice, and believing in that fully, putting your full faith and trust in the words of Jesus, in his sacrifice, that he covers you, that keeps you protected genuinely. Now, I'm not saying we won't go through some things, but I just feel led to share and talk about these things because I know we are coming up on a time where mankind is going to be fully inflicting things, trying to fulfill what the devil wants. And then I do believe a lot of this it goes hand in hand with the display of power going from the kingdoms to the beast. Remember that you are saved by grace through faith, not of works, lest any man should boast. And the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is what came into you whenever you were saved, and you were saved by that grace. So it is the Spirit that leads you in all things you do and in all correction. The Lord is truly searching for a people who will worship Him in spirit and in truth. And I know that might seem random to just kind of tack on to the end of this video, but it all goes together. And I just pray that you seek the Lord, you find Him in your prayer closet, and draw close unto Him, and take everything back to the Lord. And I will be talking to y'all soon. If y'all need prayer or Bibles, put it in the comments. God bless y'all, and I will be back on here soon.